Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. My journey with slice of life anime has been long and kinda complicated. It took many years for me to start enjoying them. In the past, I always found them rather boring. It was just hard to really get excited for them when there was so much other anime out there. No magic or complicated fictional politics or even a sport or card game to over-dramatize. No thank you. Was how I used to feel. The thing is, I did always enjoy what I'd consider to be the slice-of-life moments in those other more exciting shows. In fact, at the end of a lot of the more action-heavy anime, it was often a complaint that, in their rush to finish the story, the characters weren't as explored as I wanted them to be. There are just sides of them that you never get to see when they're not given a chance to ever relax. And the romances were often either crammed in at the end or left without a conclusion at all. I'm a big fan of a good character story, so I've definitely started to find some value in those ordinary high school shows. But also, it might just be a matter of mindset. My year so far has been spent on anime that are pretty dark and sad and dramatic. I went into this month looking for a break from all that. So where a show like Jinsei may have seemed a little bit dull a few months ago, right now it sounded like exactly what I needed. Jinsei starts with Yuki being bullied by his cousin Ayaka into joining Kumon Academy's second newspaper club, which she's the president of. He steps in as the head of the life advice column. Joining him are three girls with three different perspectives on life: the aggressively logical Rino, who specializes in the sciences, the energetic Ikumi, whose specialty is athletics, and the kind and humble Fumi, specializing in the humanities. And that's the basic premise of the show. They receive Dear Abby-style questions from the student body and hash out their different opinions to find the best possible answers, usually leading into crazy contests and experiments where they learn more about themselves and their own struggles in the process. And it was that aspect, the lore of a heartfelt self-improvement story, that caught my eye. Maybe it sounds a little cheesy, but I love that sort of thing when it's done well. And to skip ahead a bit, overall, that aspect's not as strong as it could be, but it's definitely got its high points throughout the story. On that note, I am going to go into some things that could be considered a little spoilery, I guess. That always feels weird to say in slice-of-life anime, because it's not like there's a bunch of plot twists or a complicated story, though I was pleasantly surprised by the second half of the series. But the real draw of Jinsei was the characters, and how I hope to see them grow over time, so I do want to talk about them. I think it would be easy to write the characters off as gimmicky, because their designs are pretty simple. Take a character who would fit all the stereotypes of their field and max that out to the extreme, but they were all easy to like too, so it never felt too forced. To be honest, I just wish they grew a little more. Ikumi is high energy all the time, super athletic, but not too smart. Her answer is usually the simplest one, and sometimes she just misunderstands the question entirely, but she was a lot of fun. During her first real focus episode, we learned that she was really close with her grandfather, because her parents were always working. She basically raised herself on sports and Saturday morning cartoons, and that tends to really show through in her solutions too. She's willing to do just about anything in the name of friendly competition. She tends to butt heads with Rino, but there's no grudge she can't forgive. Ikumi's got a charisma to her that makes her pretty easy to get along with, but Fumi's got the best grasp on actually dealing with people and helping them through their problems. She's soft-spoken and understanding, and struggles with exactly the things you'd expect her to. Her first focus episode is about her friends helping her to stand up to her grandfather, who's a little overbearing, to say the least. But there are a few twists with Fumi. Her family comes from a long line of samurai, and a lot of her problem-solving is colored by old war tactics. She's got a wild imagination and lets it take over sometimes. She may be a little too compromise-heavy overall. It takes a lot of pushing to make her assert herself, but she tends to act as a grounding agent during Rino and Ikumi's arguments. and there are a few moments later in the series where she does stand up to people who are trying to bully their way into things, and it gave me just the sense of victory it was supposed to. All three girls are given their personal moments throughout, but there were definitely times, especially near the beginning, where the writers seemed the most invested in Reno, and the very simple explanation for that is because Reno's the one they set up for a romance with Yuki. It was kind of refreshing, actually. I definitely expected a harem with this setup, but I really never got that feel. They were so single-minded with this one couple. The other girls immediately jump on pushing them together as soon as they see that first spark. In a lot of ways, Reno is also struggling with exactly the things you'd expect her to. She's got the technical, scientific explanation for any given situation she's thrown into, but her interpersonal skills are almost non-existent. One of their first questions leads into a bunch of field trips with the other three trying to teach her how to make small talk. They're all endearing in their own ways, but I do have a soft spot for the awkward ones. While I mentioned that none of them were explored quite as much as I wanted them to be, Reno was also the one who definitely gave me the most, I guess I'll call it angst fodder. Just little hints that there's a little darkness in her background. Just a little, mind you, but it could have led to some really heartfelt moments if they'd played it right. The club's first really good moment as a group is one where they come together to celebrate Reno's birthday. It's something that they never placed a ton of significance on in her house, growing up, and it was the first scene to really move me, watching her new friends convince her that the day she joined the world was something worth celebrating. And then later, while arguing with a girl from the occult club over the scientific worth of fortune-telling, they discover that Reno is extremely susceptible to hypnosis. While trying to get her to reveal an embarrassing secret, the occult club girl breaks her down to her truest self, which turns out to be a very needy little girl, looking for praise and attention from anyone who'll give it to her. I know it was meant to be funny, but it was just kind of sad to me. Like, I don't get the feeling she's unhappy at home. She is most likely a carbon copy of her parents. Kindred scientific spirits. But I definitely feel like, whether she realizes it or not, there was something missing from her upbringing. A vulnerable sort of openness that she's just now getting to experience with this group. I really did like all three girls, but you'll notice someone's missing from this character discussion. Yuki was one of those main protagonists who's so bland he might as well have not been there at all. It probably says enough on its own that if there was any real overarching plot to this anime, it was Ayaka's mission to get her cousin a girlfriend in the hopes that it would make him more interesting as a person. The comedy wasn't always Jinsei's strongest point either, but I did enjoy their tendency to break the fourth wall. Jinsei's writing was pretty upfront about a lot of things. For a show that otherwise had a very cutesy feel to it, there was a fan service element that's impossible to ignore. And I mean, I'm far past the days when even the most ridiculous, physics-defying fan service bothers me. The only time it really feels worth mentioning at all is in a show like this, where it just feels a little out of place. I got the same feel from Sakura Trick sometimes. The rest of the anime is just made to feel so cute and, I don't know, wholesome in an innocent, kids learning life lessons sort of way. The fan service scenes kinda took me out of the experience. Like, they never quite let you forget that the show was written and directed and drawn by a bunch of older men who may have had other motivations for making a show about cute high school girls. It had a bit of a self-insert, wish-fulfillment feel to it before I saw the striking resemblance Yuki has to the guy credited with writing the story for the original light novels. And I know main protagonists like Yuki are a dime a dozen and not really worth getting frustrated over, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't disappoint me from time to time. I like to see at least the minimal effort being made. There was just no role Yuki plays in this series that couldn't have been taken over by one of the girls. They try to pass him off as the mediator in the middle of their differing perspectives, but you've got Fumi sitting right next to him who was just made for that job. And I know the argument there would be how she struggles to assert herself because she's usually just too polite, but honestly, I never saw that with her clubmates. Not once. And I looked for it, too. It was clear really early on that Yuki was pretty pointless to the story. As heated as the two can get when they're arguing, Rino and Ikumi are always perfectly respectful of Fumi, and in turn they could easily take over the duty of interrupting her when she goes off on one of her tangents. It kinda goes back to how little it feels like they change over the course of the series. They have moments where they shine, but they feel like exactly the same people in episode 13 that they were in episode 1. There's a big focus on friendship in the last few episodes and how they've grown closer as a club. And that's pretty meaningful for Rino, who had no luck making any friends before, but I was hoping for something a little deeper from each of them. Actually, the best solution would have been to just make Ayaka the main protagonist. She's a supporting character, as is, but she's the only one to have, like, an actual developed story and motivations in this whole show. The last 5 episodes or so revolve around this feud she has with the student council president, who is abusing her power. She ropes the Life Advice column members into helping her get evidence that Kaori's mishandling the club's funds, among other things, so she can write an article exposing her corruption. It's actually kind of baffling that Jinsei's not her story. But I'll leave that tangent where it is. I sought out Jinsei looking for a show that I didn't have to think too hard about. I just can't seem to stop myself from jumping off into that realm of possibilities. Jinsei was cute and light and fun, and interesting in the sense that I think mindset plays a huge role in how a new viewer would experience this series. If you're just along for the ride, it'll probably seem a little mindless. If you want to try and analyze their characters, every question they answer can seem like a deep debate. In my case, I think it served the purpose I wanted it to. Like it cleansed my anime palate between tastings or something. I've got my fill of everyday slice of life for a while. The next anime will definitely have a little more magic. But I enjoyed this one. In that, probably won't watch it again, but don't regret seeing it the first time sort of way. But it has some fun ideas if you like slice of life or club-based shows, and it is a pretty quick watch if you're interested in checking it out. Thank you for watching.